Hello and welcome to Bob's View. We made a few videos the other day, mainly about the cheating in this U.S. president election, focusing on the ghost vote in Michigan, because we ran into data file on the ghost vote in Michigan. Ghost ballot came from more than 800 zip codes in Michigan. The county and rim where the election fraud was first reported was also analyzed separately. The county, the 38 gold tickets coming from all 7 zip codes. The videos received widespread attention after publication. Most comments were positive on the approach of talk with data. On the other hand, there were also a few netizens have different views, thinking that this ghost vote was a rumor because the claim had been debunked in the mainstream media, and therefore continued the discussion was meaningless. One netizen even forwarded me an article from the BBC, the clarification on the issue, claiming that the ghost vote didn't exist. We believe that this netizen thought represents the idea of some people, as the goal of Bob's View is to speak with data. We read through the relevant mainstream media report and compare the data at hand with them to verify if the media coverage was consistent with our data file. Before we interpret this mainstream media article, let's go through the data and do a basic explanation for setting up the base for discussion. This first picture is about the data file we received. The document has a list of 11,813 people in total, and the Michigan State received 11,305 ghost votes from them. According to the data file author, 9,948 people were verified dead through the Social Security Death Index. This means that still around 1,000 people not sure of living or dead. Looking at the data file, there are a few columns of name, month of birth, year of birth, zip code, date of ballot received, date of birth, date of death, and the age if they live to now. Some people didn't send in the ballot, show as none in the data of ballot received. In the column of date of death, there are some people marked as unknown, not sure if they were still alive. As mentioned above, 9,948 people have been confirmed died, and more than 1,000 people are not known if they have died already. This file is sorted by name, and you can see that some people have the same names, but the date of birth and death are different. The line of breached donor highlighted on the top was born in January 1901, and that the time of death was unknown. The vote received was on September 30, 2020. This is highlighted because of the reference to this person in the later article. In the second table, we singled out those who didn't vote for a total of 508 persons, because in a little time we will need this data. That means 508 people didn't vote and 11,305 people voted in total. In the picture below, we plot the year of death and the zip code, showing how many ghost votes from each zip code. One line said no value. That is for those ghost ballots with unknown year of death. 1,720 people in total. The chart that follows is the list of 1,720 people with no date of death, based on the year of their birth, to show the number of ballots received on their birth year. The bottom is the year of birth, with the number of votes received on the vertical axis. Most people were born before 1921, and 2 were born in 1900. Not many people were born after 1921 up to 1954. Those people have no record of age for death, but those before 1921 are in their hundreds as of now, and we have reason to assume that they were all dead. But others born in later years up to the last year of 1954 may still have a good chance of alive. The chart shows the number of people who received the ballot and the year of death. We had excluded those not knowing the year of death and only kept those who have a record of a death year. The earliest death year was 1949, with a relatively small number of people. The number of ballots continually increased up to 2011. That means that out of a total of 9,585 people identified as dead to make a ghost vote, the earliest died in 1949, and he had been dead for about 70 years. The latest death was in 2011, 9 years after their death. Not all of them died in the recent year. Well, this is the data. Now we compare the data to the news media coverage to see how they describe the issue. The first article was from BBC. A netizen referred this article to me. For respecting this netizen, we look at this article first. What is the inside of this article? There are 5 viral claims about the 2020 U.S. election, and the reporter conducted a fact check. The article was timed as 2 days ago, and I got this article on the 11th. Then it should be published on either November 8 or 9. On this slide, one of the 5 rumors was about the ghost ballot. So let us focus on this one. He said that the dead could not vote, and the Michigan rumor was debunked. He talked about Michigan, and that was the data that we have. He said Michigan officers came out and fought back, saying that the rumor was untrue. He said that the dead man didn't vote. The dead people vote will be invalidated, but didn't see how the vote would be invalidated. He said there was a viral tweet online saying that the man who confirmed absentee vote had died at the beginning of the last century. In the middle, he gave the example and marked the news as false. Why did he say it was false? He said there was a man whose father had been died, and that man had the same name and address as his father. The local official also told the author that his son, the vote had been mistakenly taken as the father's vote. It is possible for the father and son having the same name, and many fathers and sons in the United States share the same name. Just differentiate with the senior and junior. It's also possible that the son still lived nearby or at the same address without moving. They may also have the same month of birth, but not the same year of birth. As soon as we look at the voter information, we can find that the year of birth is required to access the system, so we can still tell the differences between the father and the son. The author also referred to Donald Trump Jr. having the same name as his father, President Trump. Another possibility mentioned was the technical glitch, such as the voter being entered into a dummy birthday if they couldn't find the initial registered voter information. Just filling the false information if unable to find initial registration. We will not discuss if it's illegal practice here. Even the false information was entered, those were some individual cases, not for majority in the file. The author only mentioned these two possibilities, the possibility of a repeating name and false birthday. We will talk about the possibility of those fact errors in later section. This is all for the first article. In addition to this BBC article, I also found other cut code on the internet. This second article was from the BuzzFeed News. They also analyzed several misleading messages about the general election. In the article, they also reminded readers to pay attention to the published date when they read the message. That was a good reminder, so we checked the published date of this article, and the most recent update date was November 3rd. However, the evidence cited in the article happened on November 5th or November 6th of the published data. We believe the author just forgot to update the published date. I believe that it was just a typo as the technique of time traveling is not available yet. The first evidence cited in the article, which claimed that people were dead and can no longer vote, and it was dated at November 5th, in contrast to the statement that article was last updated on November 3rd. Later, they also cited a spokesman from the Secretary of State in Michigan as the official response and mentioned several possibilities. The spokesman claimed that even if there were dead people to vote, those votes would not count, without mentioning how to ensure those votes were not rejected. Only said that a situation if the man had voted in absentee while alive and then died before the election, it means that the voter only died recently in 2020. There will surely exist of a similar situation. However, the most recent time of death in the date file was in 2011, which was 9 years ago. It's obviously not applicable to this situation mentioned by this official, right? In extremely rare case, the officer said a living vote looks like a little bit like a ghost vote because the voter had the same name as the dead man. Still, the same situation mentioned in the first article. For example, John Smith Jr. was mistaken for John Smith Sr. A third case was due to data errors, especially data of birthday error. In the voter filed, the date of birth was filled in wrong. However, no living people would fill in their death date at the time of registration, as they don't know the death date yet. Because they are living, the date of death was 9 years ago in our date file, so this situation still doesn't apply to the file we have. Because of the use of because the fact that we use the date of death in the plot and in the file. To summarize the article, only 3 possible readings mentioned. First, someone voted and then died. The second, father and son used the same names. And the third is the wrong registration of date of birth. Finally, the author made the point, saying that even if they were mistaken in the system, local government clerks would fix them if they were brought attention to the errors. As we have talked in previous videos, it's been a week since the issue was brought up November 4th. We can still find the record of ghost vote on the state website. If you are interested, you can verify it with the record present at the beginning of this video. If you need the complete file, I have the downloaded file to share with you. This is for the second article. Next, I would like to focus on analyzing the article from the CNN. The reason being that the whole article was devoted to the issue of Michigan dead vote, which was published on November 8th, almost the same time as the article from the BBC. First, he said Democrats were accused of using dead vote to steal election results trying to defeat Trump. CNN analysts examined the situation and found no such situation. Let us see how the analysis reached that conclusion. He mentioned that the document he found include the name of registered voters, date of birth, and zip code, but not mentioning the date of the death. The author also said that among the total of more than 14,000 persons in the list, he picked the top 25, and then 25 were picked randomly for a total of 50%. He then checked these names in the Michigan election website to see if they voted. He also checked the public data to see if they are still alive. As you can see in the later paragraph, the author described how he got the data, and basically that's the same data file I got. So we are talking about the same data over here. The results of the validation are shown here. Among the 50 people, 37 were actually dead, but they didn't vote. 5 voted and are still living, and the rest 8 are still alive but no vote. Just as we pointed out earlier in the data analysis, there were more than 500 people who didn't vote, and 720 people who didn't have a date of death. CNN could find 3 types of samples from that list, but those only accounted for a very small section in the data file. More than 9,500 people were confirmed dead and voted in the list, but none of them showed in the CNN sample. We showed the plot with the year of death and the number of votes, different from a CNN statement. CNN didn't mention the majority in the data file, only selectively picked from a subgroup within the data file. The author acknowledged that the sample was not representative, but said that the trend was clear. If his sample was not representative, how could he conclude that the trend was clear? The author picked 50% without finding a single vote from that person in the data file. It was really not an easy job without finding any dead people voted from that file. One can tell that this media just to manipulate the data, and what they presented was far from the truth. The author commented that the original data had been removed from the hosting website. My data was from the same source as mentioned in his article, and I have the original downloaded data. If anyone needed it, again, I can share that. He then mentioned a viral video from the Austin Fletcher, a man with online name of Fleckers, who searched for William Bradley on Michigan vote information system on last Thursday morning. By the way, Fleckers was the same source for my data file, so I am talking about the same data file as used in this CNN report. The news reporter said there was indeed This online search by the public record showed that William Bradley was born around 1902 and died in 1984 in Wayne County, Michigan. And it showed that his son, also known as William Bradley, living at the same address and still alive as a voter. He would try to show that the similarity between the names of the two people led to the misunderstanding. Reading mentioned in the CNN report includes the potential error of government employee, software glitch, the fact that some people lived longer, and some voters used incorrect date of birth. It also mentioned a situation in which the director of the Michigan Election Office, George Azzozi, explained that January 1st, 1900 was the temporary use of data in the software for those who voted absentee. There were only 2 people born in 1900 in the data file, so the others were all after 1911. So this doesn't apply to the situation data here. He cited an example of a Government Accountability Institute in 2017, saying 3 data, January 1st of 1900, January 1st of 1850, and January 1st of 1800 were commonly used in software tests. Those 3 data were just filled in when one could not find the exact birthday. We didn't have those 3 dates in our data file, so they don't apply to our situation. Besides, the other quoted official statement from Michigan Secretary of State's office saying that it was almost impossible to vote in the names of dead men, mainly due to a few reasons, and one unlikely scenario is that some people applied to vote while alive but died before they returned to the poll. Some people who went to vote in the name of already died person can be screened out with the signature match. An example of a 20-year-old cancer patient was provided who was reported to have voted but died before the election day. This kind of exceptions are possible as individual cases, but if he died after submitting the vote, then the year of death is 2020, right? The date of death in our database was over 9 years ago, so this situation was not the case in our data file. The author also added a statement from a website of another independent research organization named Brandon Center for Justice, which is a non-partisan but more liberal-leaning law and policy institute. The statement was that illegal voting was very rare, and he just quoted other people's opinion. And we didn't see their data, so don't comment. We have no comment on it. Now we have known many whistleblowers have come out to tell the election fraud that clearly show that what the CNN reported was not true. Finally, we have finished reading the 3 articles. We can see that the 3 articles didn't tell the whole story, unable to explain the chart presented in the beginning of this video, where ballots were received from more than 9,000 people being dead 9 years ago. I can summarize the reading into 3 possibilities. One was that a living person cast an absentee ballot and then died before the day of the election. The death would happen in 2020, but the year of death in our data file was before 2011. Obviously, this is not the case, not the reading for our case. The second possibility was the inherited names between the family members, such as the names of father and son. That situation likely exists, although in a small quantity. The third possibility was that clerk errors leading to the wrong birth date. I have listed the source of the 3 articles here. for interested audience. Now we check on how likely this situation to happen. First, we check the voter information system to see what information do we need to check voter data on the Michigan election website. It needs first name, last name, month of birth, year of birth, plus a zip code. Total of 5 items. Remember that these 5 requirements. It requires 5 requirements to match for accessing the electronic information system. That means when government employees enter the information, as long as they enter a piece of wrong information, users will not be able to enter the system to find the registered information. How likely is that a clerk or software error could result in more than 9,000 dead people's information to match the record in the voter system? You have remembered the 5 requirements. Let's demonstrate how small is the chance to happen. Assuming the probability of an event to occur is P, the probability of error in the first of the 5 requirements is P1, and the probability of error in the second is P2, followed by P3, P4, and P5. Because these 5 requirements are independent information, there is no causal relationship between them. It must meet all requirements correctly to enter the system. That is to say that the government employee must make mistakes in all 5 requirements before we can use incorrect voting information to access this system. 5 probability of error at the same time. You multiply this 5 probability from P1 to P5 all the way up. What is the final probability? Assuming that the employee is the 1/10th likely to make a mistake at each step for various reasons, that is to assume that 1 in 10 names entered would be wrong, considering the software had been successfully used wrong for at least several years. Giving the such an example of high probability is the kind of insulting to the data system and the qualification of a government employee. In fact, the probability of error should be much smaller than 1/10th. We just use this extreme value to estimate the chance. That is, using such a high probability for each event, let's take a look on how likely the mentioned reason to match the actual data. For the same person, I multiply 5 times of 10%, and the result is the 1/100,000, which is what happened to just one person. It means the chance for matching the 1 dead person information is very small, just 100,000. For 2 dead persons, we need to multiply this probability for 1 person twice. That is the square of 1 person's probability. The result is 10 billionth. The U.S. population is only slightly over 300 million. And fewer than 200 million registered voters. It is estimated that it will take 10 billion people to have 2 dead person information matching the database by mistake, just by the system mistake, allowing 2 dead persons to be identified as voters, not even 3. I have more than 9,000 people here in the data file. Do you think this excuse can explain why those ghost ballots happen? Overall, the reasons mentioned in the 3 articles don't explain the data we have. From here, we can see that the mainstream media have misled you with very trivial data to reach a conclusion that they want you to believe. If you don't read it and think carefully or lack of common sense, then you would get lost. Fortunately, we have received the original data file and came to our own conclusion through a rational analysis. It also shows that it is difficult for us to receive the real information from this mainstream media anymore due to the variety of reading. The funny thing is that the more you read the article for the searching for the real information, the more likely you got misled. Thus, you are further away from the truth. Then your idea would be biased. After seeing so much, we are finally done. To have a summary, a lot of the mainstream media just claim the ghost vote in the Michigan is the just a rumor, and many of us just follow them blindly. Our data analysis of a ghost ballot used dead people the year of death to see the relationship between the year of death, the zip code, and the number of ghost ballot. The fact that more than 9,000 people have been dead for more than 9 years is not mentioned by the media at all. Then we interpreted the 3 articles that mentioned 3 possible reasons for the ghost vote. We carefully analyzed the data to show that those reasons were not able to explain the data. In the end, we still believe in the existence of the ghost vote. Michigan government need to come up with a new course to explain the true reason of ghost vote. Fortunately, the Federal Election Committee had started the investigation of the election fraud. We will wait to see what happened. If you have any question or you find a new possible reason, then please leave a message, comment, and we can continue the discussion. Bob the perspective, Bob the view, speaking with the data, record observation and thoughts in life. Your support is our motivation to continue the work. Please subscribe and forward the program to your friend. Thank you.